The real-life incident of Bloody Mary, the haunting of Claire Matthews. The legend of Bloody Mary has terrified generations of children and adults alike. The premise is simple: stand in front of a mirror, usually in a dimly lit room or by candlelight, and chant, "Bloody Mary," 3 times. The legend claims that doing so will summon a ghostly apparition of a woman covered in blood who will either reveal your future, scratch your face, or even drag you into the mirror itself. While most people play the Bloody Mary game as a joke, Claire Matthews, a 16-year-old high school student from Illinois, found herself caught in a terrifying experience that blurred the lines between myth and reality. In October 2003, Claire was invited to a Halloween-themed sleepover at her friend Jessica's house. The night was full of typical activities, scary movies, candy, and ghost stories. The group of 6 girls, Claire, Jessica, Sarah, Emily, Lindsay, and Rachel, sat in their pajamas in the dimly lit living room, swapping urban legends about haunted houses and supernatural games. It was Sarah who first suggested they play Bloody Mary. The others were hesitant, but Claire, who had always prided herself on not being easily scared, scoffed at the idea that anything bad could happen. After some debate and teasing, the girls finally agreed to play. They decided that Claire, being the most skeptical, would go first. The group huddled into the upstairs bathroom, giggling nervously as they lit a few candles and turned off the overhead light. The atmosphere immediately felt heavy, as if the air itself had thickened with anticipation. The bathroom mirror reflected the flickering candlelight, casting eerie shadows across the walls. The girls stood in a semicircle around Claire, who was positioned directly in front of the mirror. For a moment, everyone hesitated, unsure whether to go through with it. But Claire, trying to hide her own nervousness, smirked and said, "Let's get this over with." She stared into the mirror, her reflection illuminated by the warm glow of the candles. Slowly, she began to chant, "Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary." At first, nothing happened. The mirror showed only Claire's reflection and the faint outlines of the other girls behind her. The bathroom remained silent, save for the occasional crackle of the candle wicks. The girls let out relieved giggles, their fear evaporating. "See? Nothing," Claire said, turning to face the others. But then, a cold gust of air swept through the bathroom, blowing out 2 of the candles. The laughter stopped abruptly as the room plunged into semi-darkness. Suddenly, the mirror began to fog up, as if someone were breathing heavily against the glass. The girls stared in horror as words slowly appeared in the condensation, as though written by an unseen hand. The message was chillingly clear: "Get out." Panic set in. The girls screamed and bolted from the bathroom, leaving the remaining candles and the fogged mirror behind. Claire, shaken but still in disbelief, tried to calm everyone down. "It was probably just a prank," she said, her voice trembling. "Someone must have done that before we started." But deep down, Claire felt a cold pit forming in her stomach. After that night, strange things started happening to Claire. At first, it was small, easily dismissed occurrences. Lights would flicker in her bedroom, her radio would turn on by itself, and her closet door would be open in the morning, even though she had closed it the night before. Claire convinced herself it was all just coincidence, but as the weeks passed, the events became harder to ignore. One night, about 2 weeks after the Bloody Mary game, Claire woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of soft whispers. She opened her eyes and saw, in the dim light from her bedside lamp, a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. The figure was indistinct, but Claire could make out the silhouette of a woman with long hair, her head tilted slightly as if she were watching Claire. Paralyzed with fear, Claire tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure stood there for what felt like an eternity before it slowly vanished, as if melting into the darkness. The next morning, Claire found scratches on her arms, 3 long, thin marks that burned painfully. She showed her mother, who who assumed she had scratched herself in her sleep, but Claire knew better. The scratches were too precise, too deliberate. A few nights later, Claire decided to confront whatever had been haunting her. She went back to the bathroom where they had played the Bloody Mary game, determined to prove to herself that it had all been in her head. Alone, she lit a single candle and stood in front of the mirror, just as she had done that night at Jessica's house. Her hands shook as she stared at her reflection. The room was silent, save for the faint hiss of the candle flame. Taking a deep breath, Claire whispered, "Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary." For a few moments, nothing happened. But then, slowly, the mirror began to fog up once again. Claire's heart raced as she watched the condensation form on the glass. This time, no words appeared. Instead, her reflection began to change. The face staring back at her was not her own. The figure in the mirror was a woman, her skin pale and waxy, her eyes sunken and dark. Blood dripped from her mouth, staining the front of her tattered white dress. The woman's eyes locked onto Claire's, and she smiled, a slow, menacing grin that sent chills down Claire's spine. Suddenly, the woman in the mirror reached out, her hand pressing against the glass as though trying to break through. Claire screamed and stumbled backward, knocking the candle over. The room went dark as the flame was snuffed out, and Claire bolted from the bathroom, her heart pounding in her chest. When she returned with her mother moments later, the mirror was clear, and there was no sign of the figure. But the scratches on Claire's arms had multiplied. The haunting continued for months. Claire would wake up to find the words, "Get out," written on her bathroom mirror, even when she hadn't been in the bathroom. Doors would slam shut on their own, and she would often hear the sound of soft, ghostly sobbing coming from the hallway outside her bedroom. Desperate, Claire and her family reached out to a local priest, who agreed to bless the house. He performed a series of prayers and rituals, sprinkling holy water in each room. For a while, the activity seemed to die down, and Claire began to feel a sense of peace returning to her life. But one night, while brushing her teeth, Claire glanced up at the bathroom mirror and froze. There, in the reflection, stood the same bloodied woman from before, her eyes locked onto Claire's. This time, however, the figure didn't disappear. Instead, she leaned closer to the mirror, her blood-stained lips parting as she whispered, "You can't escape me." Terrified, Claire ran from the bathroom, never daring to look in the mirror again. Claire's family eventually moved out of their house, and the strange occurrences seemed to stop. Claire never played Bloody Mary again, and she refused to talk about the experience for years. Even as an adult, she avoids mirrors at night, terrified of what might be lurking behind the glass. To this day, Claire warns others about the dangers of the Bloody Mary game, believing that what she encountered was no mere urban legend but something far more sinister. The Bloody Mary legend is often dismissed as a harmless game, a childhood dare meant to spook friends at sleepovers. But for Claire Matthews, it became a horrifying reality. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, her story is a chilling reminder that some games might open doors best left closed.